Welcome, everyone, to today's Green City Briefing, Creating Climate-Resilient Green Cities. I'm Russell Galt, and I'm part of the AIPH Green City Initiative team. The voice, AIPH is the voice of the world's horticultural industry. So as part of the AIPH aim to celebrate the power of plants, we are delighted to share with you that the AIPH World Green City Awards are now open. Find out more on how to showcase your city's achievements via the QR code, which is currently on your screen, or indeed via the AIPH website. I believe the link is now available in the chat. So I would like to thank the worshipful company of gardeners for their continued support to the AIPH Green City Briefings. As many of you know, we capture the latest green city news, projects, research, and initiatives from all over the world and publish them in the monthly AIPH Green City Global Update. So please do sign up today via the link in the chat. Thank you. Now, let me introduce Kobie Brand. Kobie is the Deputy Secretary General of ICLEI. She is also the Regional Director of ICLEI Africa, and she has over 2 decades of experience in senior management and leadership roles in the field of urban sustainability. And anyone who knows Kobie knows how passionate she is about creating greener, safer, healthier, and more inclusive cities. Kobie is also directing ICLEI's global work on biodiversity, nature, health, and water, and she represents ICLEI regularly, and indeed the broader constituency of local and subnational governments in various international and global advocacy forums, not least the Rio Conventions. So over to you, Kobie.
Thank you, Russell. And it's so nice to speak with an ex-colleague of mine. Russell had a wonderful time earlier in his career with ICLEI, and we worked very, very closely together, and we have fond memories of that time. So thank you, Russell, for that kind introduction. Good afternoon, everybody, for joining us here today. I say thank you, and it's for me an absolute pleasure to be MC for this important session, and I would like to thank AIPH for inviting me to do so on behalf of ICLEI. ICLEI and AIPH indeed have a strong and ongoing partnership, collaborating on various initiatives and events over the years. ICLEI has been part of the jury of the World Green City Awards, while AIPH has contributed to sessions at the summits of subnational governments and cities that ICLEI has organized and co-hosted with the CBD COP host cities and governments and the CBD Secretariat as official parallel events to the COPs since 2008. So indeed a long history of collaboration and working together. Both our organizations have also co-hosted awareness-raising webinars and collaborated through Cities with Nature, of which ICLEI is a founding partner and of which AIPH is one of the 20 global supporting partners. Nature-based solutions deliver quantifiable cash value to city authorities, as well as enhancing the quality of life for citizens through solving problems such as the urban heat island effect and poor local air quality, but many more. This briefing will feature the winner of the Living Green for Climate Change category of the World Green Cities Awards in 2024, Mandera, Kenya. And this city has won for its innovative greening program, which we'll hear about more on a little bit later on. So without further ado, let's discover how street greening of streets through tree planting, green roofs, and other green infrastructure solutions are moderating the impacts of climate change. It is therefore my absolute pleasure to introduce and welcome our first speaker, Dr. Robert McDonald, who is the lead scientist for nature-based solutions and also the lead scientist for Europe at the Nature Conservancy TNC. Rob, it's a pleasure to see you here online. And you research the impact and dependencies of communities on the natural world, studying how nature can increase resilience in the face of climate change and improve human health and well-being. You also hold a PhD in ecology from Duke University and has published more than 100 scientific publications and 2 books. Prior to joining the Conservancy, TNC, Rob has also taught landscape ecology at Harvard's Graduate School for Design, helping our architects and planners incorporate ecological principles into their projects and into their future careers. So Rob, indeed a change maker of note. And I know that you really understand the need to be able to quantify and speak about the impact that nature-based solutions make. So I'm very, very pleased and happy to give the floor to you. Thank you, Rob.
Well, thank you, Kobie. It's great to be here, and thank you for that kind introduction. There's so many different ways this talk could go, so I'm going to just give you some opening remarks that hopefully feed into our second panelist, and then there'll be some time for, I hope, some discussion afterwards. So I hope you're seeing this picture of the Earth at night from space, and I centered it on Africa, since that's where our second speaker is located at. This is the urban world we live in. And so I just wanted to set the context for why we're even talking about nature in cities, right? We're living in the urban century. There's going to be another 2 billion people in cities by 2050 or so. If you were to push all that new urban area together, it might cover the state of Texas in the US, or sort of a moderate-sized country like Colombia. So it's a huge process of urbanization. And we're creating that urban home that we're gonna all live in. And that urban world, what it's going to be is a choice that we're making, and we have to balance many things as we think about the shape of those cities. So I want to leave you first with a tension here. In one sense, cities are quintessentially human. So Aristotle, I think, talked about humans as the social animal, right? So we're creating this space where interactions are more frequent, population density is greater, economic activity is greater, and there are benefits to that density. So I'm showing here one particular chart that's famous in the transportation literature that shows that denser cities have greater efficiency in using energy for transportation, and they have less greenhouse gas emissions. And you could make other charts like this. There are benefits to density in terms of economic productivity, in terms of walkability. So in one sense, density and that proximity to people is something that's wonderful about cities. At the same time, there's this growing body of scientific literature that makes it clear that cities are really inhumane in a way. We were not designed, we didn't evolve as a species to live at this kind of density. And there are trade-offs in terms of greater stress in cities, from the noise, from kind of the pace of interaction. There's higher levels of mental disorder, so schizophrenia, stress, depression. There's also issues with physical health in cities. So putting aside issues of air quality, for instance, issues of urban heat island, etc. So one of the challenges for urban planners, and I want to acknowledge there's many more, right? But one of the challenges is thinking about how do you get the best of both of these trade-offs between the benefits of density and some of the challenges of density. So I want to give you this idea that nature is one of those ways to, in America at least, we say have our cake and eat it too. So this idea that we could have dense, productive cities, but also have a bit of nature as a way to get the best of both worlds. So I'm going to just talk a bit about that trade-off, and then hopefully give you a few landscape architecture kinds of principles of how some cities manage to be dense and green. But I wanted to acknowledge by saying there is a rough trade-off here. So dense cities, I'll talk first about this left chart. Dense cities tend to have lower tree cover. All else being equal, climate, of course, plays a really big role. On the left panel here is showing dots from a set of US cities. And then the panel on the right is showing, I think in this case, a sample of international cities, but just the same sort of trade-off for open space. Interestingly, it's still possible in very dense cities to have public parks. But what happens is in very dense cities, most of the open space is in the public sector, it's managed by cities. And whereas in less dense cities, a lot of the green area is people's backyards, private lands. So different management challenges depending on the density of cities. So that overall trade-off I showed you, though, is not by any means destiny. There are definitely neighborhoods that manage to be both dense and green. And so you could call those bright spots. And here I'm showing you just some data from San Francisco, that urban area, and sort of 2 points in that scatter plot. So there's so many points in that scatter plot of density and tree cover that you can't see the individual points, but I'm pulling out a picture of 2 specific neighborhoods, and you can see very different densities, very different tree cover. And in fact, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them here. This is what they look like in an aerial photo. So these neighborhoods happen to be right next to each other. One of them is the low density, less green one is kind of traditional suburban housing in the US, at least. You can see single family detached home, very car centric. Then you can see just next to it are kind of low rise apartment buildings. These are 3-story apartment buildings, but 2.5 times the tree canopy, right? And here I have different units. I'm sorry about that, but almost 3 times the population density. So there are a series of guidance principles that landscape architects can use to make neighborhoods both dense and green. And if anyone's interested, sometimes give a whole course on those topics. So please email me. Here's another one of those guidance principles just to maybe whet the conversation. And again, I'm sorry if this is a very US-centric set of examples, but this is Houston now, Houston, Texas, and I'm showing you 2 neighborhoods. The top right picture is the more green neighborhood, and the bottom right picture is the less green neighborhood. So here the main difference is where they put the parking. In one of these neighborhoods, they chose to essentially use all of the space that's not buildings on the parcel as parking, and in another, they've put parking sort of around the edge and had some space for trees in between. So I think the point is that really small differences in how you design developments can make big differences in how much tree cover, how much park space you have left. So I'm going to give you real quick in my last couple of minutes here, a couple challenges that I hope we talk about today. One is just that there's many different kinds of problems that nature-based solutions can solve. So I've shown in this table the different ecosystem services that nature can provide. So the different benefits from nature that we all rely on. You can see they work at really different spatial scales, right? If you want to cool a neighborhood, somebody mentioned climate adaptation to heat, that benefit has to be provided very locally. The trees have to be close to where people live. On the other hand, if you're thinking about protecting the drinking water from a city, as the Nature Conservancy does in dozens of cities around the world, you can be pretty far from the city center, as long as you're upstream of that watershed. So the benefit you want to provide, the problem you want to solve, affects the type of MBS you need and where it needs to be. There's also this big issue of inequality. My own research focuses on that in US communities, where in 92% of US communities, poorer neighborhoods have less tree cover than richer neighborhoods. So it's quite a pervasive phenomenon. The situation's similar in many cities around the world, although not identical. I want to acknowledge that. So we should talk today about these nature-based solutions we're talking about. How are we distributing them equitably? How do we make sure the communities where we're putting them want them? And how do we involve them in the co-creation of those spaces? Finally, I'll just say a few words about planning. When you look at, say, OpenStreetMaps or Google Maps, this is what you see of a city. This is the San Francisco Bay Area again. But to ecologists, you think about lots of things, the stormwater runoff, or the impervious surface, or the natural area, indeed. And so you're planning across all those things. So there are many different planning methodologies, I guess, that you can use to plan for urban nature-based solutions. Within the Conservancy, we use a technique we call green printing. So if anyone wants to just Google search Green Print Resource Hub, you'll find this website. There's lots of case studies here. There's sort of best practices as well. And, to us, this is a really flexible methodology that lets us plan across really different landscapes and scales, and also helps us target very different users. So you have to think about how transportation planning overlays with land use planning, and might also affect, say, how the stormwater utility is working in a city. So these sort of green prints are often multi-stakeholder endeavors to bring together a lot of stakeholders to plan a vision for what nature can bring to a city. And you often think about lots of different ecosystem services as you do that. And here I grabbed some examples for things we've planned around in our most recent projects. So I've probably talked too long. Thank you all. I'll stop sharing there and pass back to you, Kobie.
Thank you so much, Rob. And wow, a great introduction. And I wish we had 3 hours to delve into this. And thank you very much for putting the spotlight so much on the inequalities. And it's good to hear that you are focusing on that specifically as well in terms of the work of the Nature Conservancy. Of course, from Africa, this is also an issue that is very pertinent. And with that, we'll come back to a discussion, but with that, let's go to Africa. And it is now my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Saleh Maalim Alio, the Sub-National Minister for Lands, Housing, Urban Development and Municipality Affairs from Mandera County Government in Kenya. In 2024, Mandera Municipality won the Living Green for Climate Change category of the AIPH Green World Green City Awards for their greening program. It was fantastic. I've heard about it while being part of the selection panel, and it's astounding that 200,000 trees were planted within the municipality as a result of this initiative. Mr. Alio, please share how Mandera is evolving into a greener, more comfortable and more livable place for your growing urban population. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kobie, for the introduction. Now, Mandera Municipality is located in the far northern part of Kenya. It neighbors Ethiopia and Somalia. And as many of you know, Somalia has been a country that has been unstable for over a period of 30+ years. Therefore, Mandera hosted refugees in the early 90s. The refugees caused so much degradation of our lands, and Mandera County Government, through Mandera Municipality and the Mandera Green Future, in 2016 July, prepared a holistic responses to the unique Mandera environmental and socioeconomic circumstances. And these circumstances involved systematic tree planting, nurturing, and the establishment of very critical water infrastructure to support the sustainable forest growth. Mandera is a water-stressed county or region. Therefore, the sources of water is from the river, and the nurseries have to have underground water tanks, which are filled in by water boozers at intervals. The county employed 1,200 women to start amongst the community, the most vulnerable of the community, and that is youth and women, largely single women, to start the tree planting project. Initially, the county was looking at the greening for purpose of beautification. But as a program kicked off, we discovered that the 1,200 women and youth who were given these jobs did not only participate in a greening program, but there are also issues from environmental to economic to social to health security have been addressed through this program. What I mean by that is once you get employed in Kenya, you are entitled to the National Health Insurance Fund, which means that the health services is covered, meaning that the family of the person who has been employed is covered under the National Health Insurance card, addressing the issue of the health security. And I'm bringing in this just to case out how the issue of the greening and the employment of 1,200 addressed other issues, including food security, economic security, health security, the nutritional levels, and as well as the monetary, aspect of it. So since then, we planted 250,000 trees, and 1,500 women are employed. 1,200 women are employed. And I want to share with you this photograph that you are seeing. It is before and after the greening program. In Mandera, when it wants to rain, it rains dust initially. And in this photo, where you're seeing the red dust, at the back of it is the county headquarters. This was before trees were planted. The building now is clearer, the trees have grown, and it's now greener. The second photo is the road leading to the town, to the county headquarters, the county government headquarters. And initially, before the trees were planted, you could see how it looked like, and now you see how it looks like. It's more greener, it's more beautiful, and it's more cooler. The vision that we have and for the tree and the greening program and played a very critical role in mitigating climate change, in conserving our natural resources, and improving the quality of life for our residents. We inspired to be a model of sustainable development in a situation where economic prosperity, social equity, environmental sustainability go in hand with ensuring a better tomorrow for generations to come. This program had faced a number of challenges, including the fact that the program is a very expensive program. In Mandera, we don't just plant the trees, but we nurture them. So basically, the financial burden of that program is being, taken care of by the county government. So funding is a problem. The second problem is the harsh climatical conditions. The county being water stressed, we rely on a seasonal river that runs for 9 months, and 3 months it's dry. And we have animals that roam around, within the municipality area. So therefore, sometimes feed on these trees and cause danger. But this greening program has become a model, not only in the region, but we have been appreciated outside this region, and we are expanding now the program to what we call the sub-counties. It's now that we have formed the Mandera Green Future to enable us facilitate and places outside the Mandera Municipality to copy and take initiatives which Mandera Municipality had taken. I wish to appreciate that in 2024, we qualified and shortlisted to become one of the green cities. And I had had the pleasure of being in Utrecht to receive the award. It has inspired us, and we are doing more. Thank you so much, and God bless you all.
Thank you. And this is such a remarkable story of success, just indicating where there is the will and the commitment, what can be done, and how transformative that could be on the ground for people in their day-to-day lives. So congratulations once again to Mandera, to yourself. We need champions like you, Saleh, across Africa and across the world. So thank you very much for sharing this example with us. As we have seen, Mandera's afforestation program represents a remarkable transformation of a semi-arid landscape where scorching temperatures, minimal rainfall, and recurring droughts once defined daily life. Yet this is testament to a municipality's vision, determination, and resilience in the face of these challenges, and that innovation and real hard work and determination can actually make this change. With your leadership, I think Mandera is a city, a municipality to look out for, and it's fantastic that the AIPH, through its Green Awards, is putting a spotlight on the success here. Let's now turn to some of the questions and you are welcome once again to all participants. Please post some questions in the chat box, and I'll try to get to as many of them as possible in the time that we have available. In the meantime, I'm going to a general question that has already come up. How do we connect the urban planner or decision maker with a potentially new innovation offered by nature-based solutions? And, Rob, I think I'd like to start with you with this type of question. You've taught urban planners and architects about the value of nature and nature-based solutions and planning and shaping your cities with nature. I think also during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic times, we saw that nature actually came back naturally into urban environments in all different shapes and forms. Even in my neighborhood, we saw little life, just sprouting where it's actually, not been the case and disappearing over the 2-3 decades that I've lived in the house that I'm living in now. So we all have those stories to tell. But how do we not forget that? And how do we actually move forward on that? And are urban planners are their mindsets actually committed to shaping our cities of the future, as you say, with nature? And do you see that this change has already occurred, or is there more work to do? And if so, how do we do that?
There's a lot in that question. Yeah, I think the change is starting. I guess I would highlight two things that we need. First is just more inspiration, more planners, community members, government officials who are inspired to try a nature-based solutions approach. So I think there's been a lot more evidence that nature can help solve certain problems, including climate resilience or reducing the dust that we were just talking about in the previous speaker's example. So I work sometimes just on the nuts and bolts of quantifying. Okay, if we do this MBS strategy, how much will it solve this problem? So even if the use case is there, you need planners, activists in cities, government officials to know about the value of nature and to feel inspired to try it in their own community. And that can sometimes be an economic analysis, but a lot of times it's also a case study or a story from another place that they're inspired by and want to try themselves. The second thing is maybe more practical and more challenging. A lot of the cities we work with, there are just challenges of coordination between different departments and different institutions, So even if the public health department, for instance, is concerned about hot temperatures, which are going to get worse with climate change, and they want to think about increasing tree canopy cover as a way to reduce that risk, the road right of way might be controlled by the Department of Transportation, right? Or the Parks Department. And so getting those different government agencies to talk to each other and have a shared vision of what nature can do for a city, that's sort of the step after the inspiration is sort of getting to the details of, okay, we all want to try to create this more natural future. How do we collaborate between agencies and find a workable solution? Pass back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those insights. I think the one point you made is about the value of storytelling. And I think anybody that watched this inset now from Mandera is inspired when we see how with fairly little resources and working with the community in a very hands-on way, seeing the results as they plow along through real hard effort. That power of telling that story is inspirational. But still, as you say, the coordination at city level is often, especially in the larger and more formalized cities, is often still eluding us. In big cities, there are so many departments. They've got such a big staff complement, and they drive their own agendas within their limited budgets and with a lot of work pressure on them. We find in many parts of the world that there isn't even a nature or conservation department or a biodiversity department in a city. So it's embedded in a couple of other functions, often coupled with health. And you spoke about health when you presented your benefits in your slides in the cultural benefits aspect. Health, but also mental health and well-being, etc. And I think, one could also look at doing more there. I know that you are very interested in this topic and making the link to water as well. So we'll circle back to that. But let's first come maybe and hear from Mr. Alio. Mr. Alio, how did on this journey, it's a remarkable journey of success, but how were there times at the point that you felt we should give up, or how did you maintain the momentum? And how did the community decide to put all that effort on an ongoing basis into this project? So yeah, if you can just speak to the human aspect of how you managed to plant those 200,000 trees and how they are still thriving today.
And thanks, Kobie. I want to begin with a follow-up on what Robert had indicated in terms of how do we connect nature-based solutions with issues of urban planning. I wish to inform you that in Kenya, the structure of the municipality is such that it is domiciled within the Ministry of Lands and Urban Planning, Urban Development. And there's a Kenyan, currently we have a program by the World Bank called Kenyan Urban Support Program that phase 2 that is running on. And the municipalities have actually been conditioned. There's a conditional grant that if you don't have a registered urban planner within the municipality, then you are not entitled to the funding. So therefore, there's now synergy between the issue of land administration, land tenure regularization, the issue of urban development, and the issue of planning and nature-based solutions. That I leave it at that. On Mandera County, Mandera Municipality, and the Green Future, and at the start of it, when the governor came up with the idea and he instructed the Department of Environment to kick off, many people saw him as a madman. A madman in the issue that you want to recruit 1,200 women to water trees? Yes. Then they told him, you have the wrong priorities. People don't have health. There's issue of food. There's issue of education. And you're talking to us about, trees. They said, no. This is a wrong priority. But he stood his grounds and he brought in and, a lot of community support. And the water boozers were contracted. The ladies were put through the recruitment exercises. And initially, how do you protect the trees that you are planting along the highway? And it requires protection from the goats and the cows and the camels that are roaming around, appreciating that this is a nomadic pastoral communities that keep herds even in town. They had now to get wire meshes around the tree that was planted. Secondly, the old ladies who are now nurturing the trees had now to go back home, look for old mosquito nets and old pieces of clothes and tie around the wire mesh to protect the animals from feeding into. As years went, the trees had grown pretty well, and now it became shade for everyone. And that's actually when the town now, when it's our winter temperatures in quotes is about 27-30 degrees, and our summer is about 39-40. So now people drive out of town to go and rest under those trees. It was a very expensive exercise at the beginning. But when the trees have grown and the people initially, even who declined the offer to be recruited, started coming back and asking the government now, we are ready now to plant the trees and we have seen its benefits. Do you have vacancies for us? And that is how, many have now taken the culture of tree planting away from what they were employed for and bringing it back home. Now, every of those persons have planted trees in their own homes because they have seen the value of the tree planting. Since this new administration came into office, we are now moving away from planting trees for shades, and now we want to do fruit trees. And that's now what the county government is planning to roll out. Because we have found out that if we manage to put fruit trees, given the nature of the environment here, and the Nairobi is about 1,200 kilometers away, and that's where the fruits are being supplied from, then we could actually improve the nutritional value of our residents. And that is the approach. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And thank you for sharing these very honest, insightful remarks about the journey that you've taken. It's not an overnight success, and people have to have that vision. So in your case, it started with the governor, and of course, he was able to convince the community to put trust in and faith into the project. And the fact that you say that they went back to their households and got old pieces of clothing and used mosquito nets to come out and protect the trees shows a tremendous amount of caring that goes into that. And there must have been a strong sense of belief and community, and that they're now reaping the benefits is just remarkable. The fact that you're now looking at fruit trees as productive trees that can also supplement food security in the region is a remarkable story in itself. And I wonder, Russell, if the AIPH can make a consecutive award, because I think, moving on from this initiative now to sticking it out and moving on to productive tree planting is just amazing. And this is a story that we need to keep telling. So thank you very much much for sharing that. Rob, I'd like you to react to that and maybe bring in some of the other aspects that you spoke about, coming back to the benefits of nature-based solutions, perhaps focusing a little bit more on the cultural benefits as well.
Well, there's so many pieces to that, and it's hard to know where to start. I mean, yes, every time I hear a story like this, it's very inspiring, and it reminds you of how much every process is local. Every community has a different set of issues, and so I think actually this term nature-based solutions, even though now it's very popular and it's sort of unified a lot of work, it's also deceiving because these are very different solutions tailored to solving different problems to the needs of a certain community. And yeah, sometimes we end up thinking about, oh, there's one agenda for nature-based solutions, but I think there's multiple agendas and multiple things we need to plan for, you know. So to give you some examples of that in a quantitative sense from my work, I work sometimes with cities on heat. And there, in especially places where it's wet enough to naturally have trees, a lot of the focus is on tree canopy cover, right? As the nature-based solution that's fairly cheap compared with something like green roofs, and it can shade impervious surfaces. The trees transpire water, and that cools down air temperatures in a really predictable way that you can plan for. And then you can work through how that reduces mortality and morbidity, how it reduces electricity use for air conditioning. So there's a very clear value proposition, you know, and then we might work with a different community, and they're very focused on issues of human well-being or access to parks. And there is a science too of how close does a park need to be to where people live. You know, it's sort of more in this walking distance. But there, you know, tree cover per se doesn't matter, and it often has to do with what members of a community want in a park, and some of that is also who's just organized. You know, I engaged once in a small way in a park planning process in Virginia in the US when I lived there, and you know, I came in as an ecologist thinking, oh, it's going to be about creating this new park. It's going to have some natural habitat and trees and things that I cared about. But there was also a public comment period, right? Anybody from the public could come in and say what they wanted. And the most organized group of people wanted basically a bocce ball court. They wanted a place to like go play ball. And so those recreational spaces were what they really wanted out of the park, right? And so I think I'm just repeating and sort of reinforcing, Kobie, some of what you said, that the vision that you create for a nature-based solution is always a bit contested, right? Different groups bring in different values, and you need a way to find a plan that's going to work with most people and have support. So I hope that's one message that everyone takes away from this. There's many problems nature can solve, but you have to have clarity on what are you planning around, and then you have to have a process that brings in multiple stakeholders to talk about that.
Thank you very much, Rob. And circling back for a minute to Mr. Alio, you mentioned the need. You mentioned the situation in Kenya now with the World Bank initiative and so on around urban support, and that the national government is involved through land administration and the you know, the planning departments and so on. So what we're seeing here is really national embracement, or creating an enabling environment at the national basis, and then bringing in a multi-level governance way the local actors and the municipalities as well. So do you see that your initiative, like what we see in Mandera, do you see this taking this type of initiative or collective ambition involving the community and so on around nature, around in and around municipalities? Do you see that this is being duplicated or happening elsewhere in Kenya or elsewhere in Africa that you're aware of? Or is this still an insular example in Kenya? And do you feel that there's more that the national government can do to support or enable this, or are they really with you on this one? Mr. Alio, can you unmute there? There you go.
Yes, the initiative of the World Bank is specifically 5-year program based in Kenya. I'm not sure whether they have spread that to the neighboring countries or the neighboring regions. The municipalities have really improved, because appreciating that in 2013, the Kenya constitutional framework changed, and we got what we call devolved functions, devolved units called 47 counties. At that point, the county governments threw out what was initially the municipality structure. So it was until 2018 when the World Bank came back with this Kenyan Urban Support Program, and all the 47 county headquarters turned out to be municipalities. And that is where the beginning of the funding for the Kenyan Urban Support Program started. From where I said, of course, it has improved the issue of municipality, but the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources and the current government has a program of planting 15 billion trees in Kenya. It's a very ambitious program. And I remember doing an article on how that can be achieved in one of the leading newspapers in the country. And I think I will share it at some point, what I think about. But I think this is a very good Kenyan and World Bank initiative, and it has improved capacities of urban planning, and it has improved the thinking of municipal managers and local administration and the county governors on how to create linkages between urban growth, nature-based solutions, and appreciating that climate change effects are really taking toll on this country, and specifically 70%, 80% of this country is arid and semi-arid. So the droughts are now more recurrent, and the suffering from the effects of climate change is more than ever before. So I think the programs now are very good, and they're changing on how we are thinking about the future.
I think, Rob, this is certainly for you who love tracking things and who've also published lots of studies on tree canopy and the impact of that. And you're also an advocate for the right tree in the right place and all of those things. This is certainly something that we should look into, about 15 billion trees. And Mr. Alio, I would love for you to share your article and your thoughts that you have about that ambition. It will be fantastic to engage further on that. And I would like to say how inspirational, how transformative your example has been. But I'd like to just pose one last question to each of you, and you can reflect on what each other has also said. But coming back to the AIPH, AIPH celebrates plants, and they believe in the power of plants specifically, and it's under the auspices of AIPH that this webinar is taking place. So from their perspective, if there are people out there who are, or municipalities or actors in the urban space, even communities who are not yet embracing the notion of plants, what advice can you give them? Where do they start and why? Well, I guess why is very clear, but where do they start? And any advice that you can give to them about how they can use plants to start changing their urban lives? Rob, maybe first to you and then to Mr. Alio.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I always encourage folks to start close to home and close to their heart, meaning what something that motivates them. And that can be solving a certain problem, or it can just be about improving a certain space. In my life, a lot of my own sort of tree planting or volunteer time has gone towards like my kids' schools, right? I mean, there's this way that parents wanted to see the space they played in have a little more trees, and so we put in effort. We planted some trees and worked through the municipal processes, which in Washington, D.C. were a little complicated, to get some of those trees in. And it does come down to also species that mean something to you when you're thinking at that scale, both what's going to look beautiful in the fall, what's the right tree for that climate, but also what might be symbolic. My own family has a tradition. When someone dies, we will plant a tree that flowers around the time that they died. And so every year we sort of remember them. Now that's all getting a little mixed up with climate change, right? The time that things flower is changing, but it's a good tradition, right? And so think of ways that you can connect with nature in your own life and in your own spaces, and sort of start there. I guess that's my high level advice, Kobie.
How beautiful, how beautiful. Thank you, Rob. And I think we'll all remember that advice. Mr. Alio, the last word is yours before I return back to Russell to close us out. Any advice for anybody, maybe in your context in Africa? How do they start embracing plants in their daily lives?
Actually, when we got shortlisted for the AIPH, and we went to a courtesy call to the Cabinet Secretary for Environment, and we've given him the story and the processes in which we were shortlisted, the very many questions and documentation that AIPH has asked us to supply, and the kind of transparent methods in which we got shortlisted. And he was a bit surprised. He asked, what is AIPH? That was the beginning point. So I think AIPH in Kenya now is more popular and more known about. Secondly, if the award will have had a cash prize, it will have given a lot of Kenyan municipalities and motivation to start planting more trees and fighting for it, to see whether they can manage it to be shortlisted. From where we sit as a county government, it was a great pleasure to have traveled to Utrecht at the invitation of AIPH, and it was none other than His Excellency the Governor in attendance. So it has given us not only knowledge and network, but it has given us a lot of encouragement to do more, to be able to compete in the future and awards. Lastly, but not the least, and we appreciate the AIPH for the wonderful work it's doing globally, and more importantly, the resolution to be able to organize conferences of that magnitude, appreciating that it's just a membership and people and organizations committed to see a better world that is green, that is healthier, and that's more resilient to climate change. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Amazing words from both inspirational speakers. And on behalf of ICLEI and on behalf of Cities with Nature, we also say thank you very much to AIPH for hosting this awards opportunity, recognition opportunity for cities around the world. Cities, please put your applications in, and ICLEI and Cities with Nature, to which AIPH and the Nature Conservancy are partners, to really also stand with this award system. So Russell, thank you very much. I think we've seen today what resolve and commitment and partnership and togetherness can mean. And with those words, I'd like to go back to you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kobie. And indeed, thanks to everyone for joining us today at this AIPH Green City Briefing. Kobie, I think you did a marvelous job in teasing out some really interesting insights and pearls of wisdom. Thank you very much for that. And thank you, of course, to Rob and Saleh, our speakers, for fascinating presentations. And indeed, thank you to you, the audience, for joining us from all over the world. Our next Green City Briefing is titled Urban Green Spaces for Health and Wellbeing. So we hope to see many of you there. I believe it will take place on the 15th of May. If you did enjoy today, please do tell your friends, let them know so that more can join next time. Please do share your thoughts and reflections on LinkedIn and tag AIPH. This session has been recorded, and a recording will very imminently be shared on our YouTube channel. And then finally, I'd like to thank our sponsors for bringing this series to life. That is the Worshipful Company of Gardeners. Until next time, thank you very much, and goodbye from the AIPH Green City team. Thank you. Bye.